Almost every other person you will pass in the street is mourning someone. And in recent years, that has only increased enormously. So I want to introduce the day very briefly before Sinai speaks. We are in between the parashiot of Tazria and Metzora on the one hand, and Acharei Mot and Kedoshim on the other. We can't get through Sefer Vayikra very quickly. There is a notion in the Gemara and Megillah that we have to read the Tochacha at the end of Vayikra before we receive the Torah, Parashat Bamidbar, before Shavuot. So in last week's parasha, we spent a lot of time, and if you were learning the parasha, I imagine you would have found it difficult, because I always find it difficult, Tazria and Metzora. I even cheated a little. I learned Tazria during Pesach and Metzora the week after, because to do that double parasha in 1 week with all those Rashis is very, very difficult. But if you are able to disconnect from the detail and look at the theme, you see something very extraordinary. The picture in Parshat Tazria, certainly according to the Gemara in Erchin, is that one would fall and get sarat for Lashon Hara, for misbehavior in the social arena. Now the Talmud in Sanhedrin and in Sotah tells us that a variety of phenomena that used to exist during biblical times stopped happening. And one of those phenomena was sarat, was leprosy. And when you think about it in general terms, and I'm not going to bore you with this, although boring is subjective, of course, so maybe I will bore you with it, but the reality is someone speaks Lashon Hara, they get sarat and they are isolated, they have to leave the camp. And they have to sit outside the camp for at least a week. Now you can imagine that if everyone was talking Lashon Hara, everyone would have to leave the camp. And then there couldn't be isolation outside the camp because everyone would be outside the camp. So not only is it logical that this phenomena fell aside, there's no way it could continue to exist if the community spoke as we do. If they're always talking about each other and they're always slandering, then everyone will be outside the machaneh. So de facto, when you think about the social reality that the Torah is describing and existed for a while, it's the most incredible social reality. Where as a community, as people, we're good people. And if you go through the Sefer of Bamidbar, what you will see is a lot of incidents involving Am Yisrael and their relationship with God, but only two individual incidents. Only two. The Mekoshesh Eitzim and the Megadev. But above and beyond that, you don't have that at all. So why is that relevant in our context now? You know, as a certainly older person, as you get older and you see certain values or lack of values that the younger generation have, you can become very despondent. And when everyone is on their phone and everything is quick, and you lose a lot of faith in a generation. And I certainly have. That was until October the 7th, when it was a revelation, amongst many things that were revelations, was to see the younger generation, who I can say without any exaggeration, saved our people. Saved our country. The people, like Sinai's husband, who came out of shul and went straight down south, the amount of people that did that. People that just put on uniform and drove. It's just unbelievable. In fact, the commitment that we have seen over the last 2.5 years, our children have been doing Miluim for over 2 years. I have a 30-year-old son who's been in Chutz La'aretz a lot. He's been in Gaza, he's been in Lebanon. He's 30 years old, he's studying medicine. And all of our children are the same. Every single member of staff, and some of the younger members of staff have themselves been serving. If it's Rav Eitan, if it's Rabbi Weiss, if it's Rabbi Manning, if it's Rav Yosef Besokan, if it's Rav Mati. We're very proud of the fact that we are a school that believes in that. And it's something that is just unbelievable. Very near to the beginning of the war, I was working with bodies in Rishon LeZion, getting bodies ready for burial. You don't do a tahara when someone is murdered, you prepare bodies. And on one particular day, I had a wedding of a neighbor. A neighbor's child got married, and I went to the wedding. Just before I went to the wedding, my son phoned me from Bislach, which is an army base in the south. And he said, "It looks like we're going in. Will you come and speak to the chevra?" There's only one thing. If you're coming to speak to the chevra, you have to put on uniform, which made me even more excited. And so I spent the morning with bodies, the afternoon at a wedding, and then I left the wedding, put on uniform in a remote car park. I was changed my clothes and went down to speak to these chevra. I think that very few of them are yeshiva boys. And I sat there in awe of these people. And I said to my son, how am I meant to give chizuk to these people? You are my chizuk. And I suppose my entire definition of religion has changed since then. I actually don't know what a religious person is anymore. Because these people have put their lives on the line for 2.5 years. They just keep turning up. Even I said to my son when he got called up, just before Pesach, I said, enough, you're studying medicine, you can get out of this. He said, no, but it's not how you brought me up. Just got into uniform, went. Within 3 days, 2 of his unit were injured and they were pulled out. Seriously injured, they were pulled out. It's happening every day. People are coming to work and you've got no idea. You've got no idea what's going on with their children, with their husbands. You have an Ein Bayit who's been coming to work from maternity leave with an Ab Bayit who's been on Miluim for 6 weeks, through Pesach, the whole thing. And so on the one hand, you have a community, but the norm of that community is unbelievable. The norm of that community, what that community is doing is unbelievable. It's something you want to be a part of. And then you get to Acharemo Kedoshim. And Kedoshim, that's exactly the question. What is Kedusha? What is holiness? There are a lot of different definitions of holiness, and many of our commentators are struggling with the definition of holiness. To you, Kedoshim, Kedoshim to you, you should be holy. What does that mean? How do I be holy? How do I make myself holy? I know how to clean myself, and I know how to brush my hair, and I know how to comb my beard. How do I make myself holy? What is that, being holy? Is it simply going through the details of halacha, or is it living? And I had this idea, we have a mizbeach in the Mishkan, in the Beit Mikdash, and we are told by Chazal that every day we had to put fire on the mizbeach. And at the same time, fire came down from heaven. but both are required. The fire of a human being and the fire from heaven. And I thought just the other day, perhaps that is the combination of Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaTzmaut. Yom HaZikaron is the fire of human beings. Ladies, you have to know. I say this as a general comment, nothing to do with anyone, no personal comment being made here at all. You understand, we cannot have this country if every time there's a war, people run away. We cannot have this country if people just come for vacation. Can't be. Won't be. If the minute someone fires a missile, everyone leaves. Israel ceases to exist. And every time you have a comment to make about an Israeli, the comment should probably be thank you. It should be thank you. We have a next door neighbor whose husband's my age. He was killed together with Ezra Schwartz about 10 years ago. This lady's a widow. She's brought up her kids on her own. Always got a smile on her face. I have a sister who was going to speak here today. And she phoned me last week. And she just said she can't. There's a lot going on. Dad's not well, but it's not even a year since our nephew was killed. And this nephew, Tal Movshavitz, carried, what was her name? Argamani, what's her first name? Noah Argamani, carried her out of Gaza. He also was part of the unit that carried 6 bodies, including Hirsch, out of Gaza. And he was blown to pieces in Khan Yunis on the 20th of Sivan last year. That's where I'm going tonight. I'm going to my niece. She's a major in the Air Force. And we're all going there tonight. We're going south tonight. He's the most tremendous guy. I could play you a recording of this guy, you wouldn't believe it. I don't know whether the Shabbat took it off my phone. But the last time I saw him was my mother's yahrzeit. And I asked him one question. I said, can you make a minyan for my mum's yahrzeit? He was in the Shabbat, so they've been on his phone cancelling things. But I've still got it. This is a recording. Boker Tov, this is what I wrote to him. B'kavanatcha lahagia lebeit talmid b'yom shishi. You're going to come to the cemetery on Friday. This is Tal. Oh, wait. It's on silent. Can you hear it? Uncle David, why is it still having a Okay. The kids, if you're nearby, you heard, just started singing to me on the phone. Most incredible person. There's not a day goes by when I don't see his face. After he was killed, my niece phoned me and she said, will you go and identify him? So I went to identify him. I was with her throughout the identification and the Kabura. This is the Eish on the Mizbeach. This is the fire on the Mizbeach. Yom HaZikaron is the human fire to light the Mizbeach. And Yom HaTzmaut is the fire from heaven. It's the miracles of Yom HaTzmaut. I left a message for our alumni on Motzei Shabbat, who've made Aliyah. And I said to them, this is our week. There is no better week. But the week comes at an enormous price. An enormous price. But you cannot separate Yom HaZikaron from Yom HaTzmaut. We have a minhag, Sinai's here, so I'll finish. We have a minhag on Yom Tov, normally the last day of Yom Tov, to say some Ashkenazi, not Sfaradim, to say Yizkor, is to remember a family member who has passed. It's normally on the last day of Pesach, on Shavuot, there's only one day. It's on Shmini Atzeret and on Yom Kippur. And I try to understand what the minhag is or what's the purpose of the minhag. I couldn't get a clear answer, but I assume it is that there is no simcha that is complete if my Pesach's never going to be Pesach again without my mum. Never be the same. Even though I'm married, it will never be the same as Pesach with my mum. But isn't it interesting? Nothing happens by coincidence. People in Gush Etzion say that the origins of Yom HaZikaron during the Declaration of Independence on the 5th of Iyar 1948, a message came through to David Ben-Gurion, Shemalka Nafla. The Gush Etzion had fallen. If you ever go into Kfar Etzion, there's a big picture says Malka Kama. The Gush Etzion has re-established itself. And what they say in Gush Etzion, I've never clarified it with anyone else, is that Ben-Gurion stopped the declaration and had a moment's silence, and that is the origins of Yom HaZikaron. So in the Jewish calendar, in the old Jewish calendar, Yizkor is at the end in appreciation. But we are doing Yizkor before Yom HaTzmaut, so that we can appreciate. And it doesn't matter where you live, because without Israel, where you live would be much harder than it is now. Much harder. Even if you've got a few anti-Semites raising their heads and causing us problems because of Israel, don't believe for 1 minute that it's because of Israel. If it wasn't Israel, it would be something else. It always has been and will be until redemption, future redemption, final redemption. But every one of us has a lot to be grateful for. And first and foremost, we have a lot to be grateful for our soldiers, but not just for our soldiers. You know, Yom HaZikaron isn't really for the families. Every day is Yom HaZikaron. Every day. They don't need a day to remember their loved ones. The whole life is a memorial. Yom HaZikaron is for us to show our appreciation. Not just those who gave their lives so that we could live here, but to their families who continue. Carry on. For the people who live here, fight here, have a purpose in life. And it's that reason that we get together today, to get that feeling. And when you go to Har Herzl tomorrow, please God, you'll see something quite incredible. Not like you saw it on Thursday. And if you've never been there before, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. To see Am Yisrael together when the siren goes off, all types, Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, everyone together, quite incredible. That was just a few words of introduction. I want to thank and welcome Sinai. In a normal situation, I would always be happy to see Sinai here. Where is she? She's here. She's so lovely. You can see her. You can look at her. She's and Sinai was here how many years ago? She looks like she's 18 now. I'm 25. Must be 18. I think this is a new joke for you. Sinai will tell you her story. But if you think that she's together and she is such an inspiration, I want you to know, I was at the funeral. and the way she spoke beyond anything I could do. So I'm always excited to hear Sinai. I think she's going to show you something as well, right? Yeah. So I'm going to hand this over to Sinai. Good luck with it. But you can't go.
Ready.
You can see, yeah.
I haven't. Thank you.
Maybe 8 minutes. You're telling me. No.
Okay, I don't know if I put it on right.
No,
I did
that's right
towards
now.
your.
Okay.
So that's not the, that's
Oh.
just for the recording, you still have to use one of the microphones here.
Pointed towards your mouth.
Flip the mic. Flip the
I
mic.
want her to sit next to her, you see.
Ruby.
I wanted to be-
Does that one work? Was it?
One of the backwards.
No, it has to face the
The
mouth.
microphone is the face.
Perfect.
Okay. First of all, Rav Milston, thank you. For me, it's there's no words to describe. This is the only place that I want to be on Yom HaZikaron, to share with. I feel so at home here, and at the same time, I always get a little nervous when I speak here because it's like in front of my rabbi. I didn't even mean it as a joke. So first of all, thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So first of all, it's nice to meet you all, even though I feel I want to get to know you all better. I was here, 7 years ago. Just like you, I grew up in Boston, in Massachusetts. I went to my Mondays. Is there anyone here from Boston? Oh, hi. I know. You too. Okay, well, I feel so old that I don't recognize you. Nice to see you. So yeah, I grew up in Boston. I went to my Mondays, and then I came here for my year in Israel. It's the only place I wanted to come because I knew that they were going to help me make Aliyah, and they really did. I'm not even just saying that. Like, from the second that I told them that I wanted to make Aliyah, they were supportive. They were there for every step of the way, and most importantly, they were there afterwards. They still are, and I feel very, very at home in Israel and here because of Midrashat Harova. And my best friends in Israel are my friends from Harova, and so I just feel so lucky and grateful. So I'm here today to tell you about my husband Yosef and to share a little bit of our story. It's the tip of the iceberg. I feel like I never am able to say enough. Every time after I finish, I walk out and I'm like, well, I have so much more to say. So I want you to know that my favorite part of speaking with a group is actually having a conversation. So already now while I'm speaking, feel free to start thinking of questions so that we can talk more. Because I always feel like the questions bring up more things that I would have liked to speak about. So like I said, I made Aliyah in the middle of Harova on December 26, 2018, which I didn't know yet at the time, but that's my husband Yosef's birthday. So we have the same birthday. Rav Milston always says that the day you make Aliyah is your new birthday. So me and Yosef share a birthday. And I met Yosef right after Harova. We worked in Camp Moshavah together, if anybody wants to Camp Moshavah. So we worked there in the summer of 2019. And I basically fell in love with him right away. I just knew that this was somebody that I wanted to spend time with. If you can see in the pictures, I think you can see he's just full of light. Like, he's full of life and light, and he loved life and he loved the world, and it all just came back to him. Everybody who met him loved him, including myself right away. To go a little bit backwards in time, it turns out that me and Yosef had a lot of mutual friends because I'd grown up going to Camp Moshavah, and I knew a lot of kids there from Bet Shemesh, which is where Yosef grew up. And turns out when we were 14, actually, someone had showed me a picture of their basketball team, and I had zoomed in on this guy, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. That was Yosef. So I'm very good. It's okay, yeah. So it turns out I had known who he was for a long time, but we only met when we were 19. And that summer, I thought he was awesome, but what was it that drew me to him? He was always so sweet in the meetings, and he would make jokes and like all these sweet little comments, and always so smiley, like always so smiley. But always after the meetings, we would find whatever opportunity to stay and talk to each other for longer. I remember one conversation we had about Rav Kook. I had like totally fallen in love with Rav Kook here at Harova, and I knew that this was the Torah that I wanted to surround myself with, and teach to my kids, and to just have as my way of life. And I'm meeting this boy who's sweet and joking, so good at basketball, and everybody loves him, and he also loves Rav Kook, and we're just talking about him together. And I remember this one time we were standing and looking at each other, like having this conversation. It was like time stood still. I was like, whoa, this is a serious person. Like, I really want to spend more time with him. So to give you some more background context into Yosef's life, Yosef was born in Jerusalem in Shaare Zedek Hospital. He grew up in Beit Shemesh, and he went to Chorev High School for boys, which you may or may not have heard of. It's I forget the name of it. It's in Sanhedria. Yeah, Sanhedria. So every single day, Yosef would go all the way to Jerusalem for high school, and he would stay at school until like 8 p.m. because he would learn past the time that he had to learn, and then he would play basketball, and then he would come home at like 9:30. Somehow he never did homework, but he did really well in school. So that's just like a preview to other things in Yosef's life. He was very successful in the things that he did because he did them with love. After high school, he went to Eli, which is a mechina in Shomron. He was there for a year and a half. He loved it there. He felt like they really were instilling in him like values that he cared a lot about. And Eli played a big role in our lives as well when we were married. They support Army couples. They support all of their students who are soldiers, but especially Army couples. So I also really they play a big role in my life, and they have a big place in my heart. And we're both very, very grateful for the places that we learned Torah in, because they remained a part of our lives forever. So then after high school, after Mechina, Yosef drafted, he really wanted to go to Matkal. That's where his older brother went to the army. It's like the highest unit. And so Yosef did all the tryouts for Matkal, and the day before the major tryout, he loved to donate blood, and so he gave blood. And when he came home from the tryout the next day, his parents asked him how was it. He said, I mean, I was pretty tired because I gave blood, but I think it was fine. And then he ended up getting into Duvdevan, which was not his number one choice, but ended up being the most accurate Meduyak place for him to be. And from there, he did a year and a half of training, and then he became a combat soldier in Duvdevan. But Me'evet was there, like beyond, he wasn't a typical soldier. He was in the drones team, which meant that he was on the ground with a gun, like on every mission that they went on. Every single night, Devan basically goes out and arrests terrorists, and essentially preemptively stops terror attacks from happening. So Yosef is doing that on the ground with his gun, but as well, he's also looking on a screen of the view from the drone up above. And he was an eye in the sky, and he felt like it was such a schut. He initially hadn't wanted to be on the drones team. Drones were something that he loved as a hobby. He had been using drones since a really young age. He used to collect plastic water bottles and exchange them for money. Yosef was always really good at stuff like this, and he, with time, saved up enough to buy his first drone. So it was always a hobby for him. Until he was in high school, and then he made an entire YouTube page of all of the videos that he would film from his drone. He loved Eretz Yisrael. He loved taking videos of it and sharing it with the whole world. So basically, drones were a hobby of his. And when he drafted into Duvdevan, they said, we found your YouTube channel and we really want you to be in the drones team. He's like, oh no, like I didn't really think that that's what I was gonna do. It's like a hobby. In the end, it ended up being amazing for him because he was so talented with the drone from a young age. He was able to develop all these different techniques and technologies for the army. At the time, drones were not such a common form of combat, and now they really are, but at the time they really weren't. And part of Yosef's job, he started the drones team in Devan with his friend Shachar. And part of his job as an expert was to be a presenter to other units and to teach them how to use the drones the most effectively. And he taught them all these different techniques, and you know, he was so humble and so modest. He would never tell me that what he was doing was actually influencing so many other units on their warfare. Only afterwards, units like representatives of the unit came to our Shiva and told us like we wouldn't know how to use this drone if it weren't for Yosef. So protecting Am Yisrael from terror attacks, being an eye in the sky, he's also protecting the other soldiers on the ground on the mission because a drone sees things that the human eye can't. So if there's a ambush of terrorists like behind a wall, only a drone can see that. So protecting Am Yisrael, protecting the soldiers, and also putting forward that information to other units so that they can do the same. And all in all, this made for a really, really meaningful service for him. And he really didn't want it to end. He loved it so much. And bringing back, so we met when we were 19. And then we only started going out when we were about 21. And I knew that he was in the army, but I didn't know exactly that it was going to be a huge part of our lives, if not the most major part of our lives. And once I knew that, I knew, you know what, like this is obviously what we're supposed to be doing, and it's an honor for me. It didn't mean that it wasn't hard. It was very hard. Like when we were dating and when we were married, you know, I was seeing my friends that nobody's life is normal or typical, but I was seeing my friends whose husbands were home all the time and mine wasn't. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But I knew that it was meaningful to Yosef, and it was so meaningful for me because I felt like I was serving Am Yisrael in my own way, in a way that I never dreamed that I'd be able to as, you know, a 15-year-old girl living in Boston who all I wanted to do was move to Israel. I never dreamed that I'd get to serve the country in this unique way. So it was really special for both of us. Sometimes, you know, Yosef would come home every Thursday, and then at like 9 p.m. the army would call and say, Yosef, we need you to come back. So then he'd go back to the army, maybe come home for Shabbat, maybe not. It was hard. It was not normal. It was not what I expected for married life. But I saw that Yosef was doing it with love. Yosef was doing it really for love. Everything that Yosef did was for the love of the land, the people, the Torah, and beyond that was to bring the Geulah, to bring the Beit HaMikdash. So if you asked him why he was doing anything that he did, why do you want to lift weights to get stronger? He would say, well, I'm not just getting stronger, I'm getting stronger so I can bring the Beit HaMikdash. And